Did you know that there can be a major advantage to having your asylum case considered as soon as possible? It's true, and in this video, I'm going to explain why you should take action to force USCIS to schedule your asylum interview right away. I'll also tell you how you can do that. I'm Brian Manning, and I used to be an asylum officer with the government, but now as an asylum lawyer, I help immigrants all over the country to secure their future in America through asylum. There are over 500,000 asylum applicants awaiting their interview with USCIS, and many of them have been waiting for years. Lots of people are sick of waiting. They want to get their interview as soon as possible so they can win asylum, gaining certainty about their future in America. They want to put this phase of their life, all the waiting and the uncertainty, behind them. But there are others who are in no hurry. Some asylum seekers really see no need to move things forward and are content with just waiting. They figure, hey, I've got my work permit and at least I'm not in deportation proceedings in immigration court, so I'm pretty much fine with the status quo. No rush. But I've got to tell you, I don't think that's the best approach in considering your long-term immigration goals. Now, why is that? Well, because I think that the more time that passes, the less likely it is that you'll win your asylum case. I'll explain. With the passage of time, it's often hard to convince the officer that you're still in danger, that someone still wants to harm you. Even if you can point to harm or threats in the past, back when you were in your country, many officers are skeptical about your prospects for future persecution if you've been in the United States for a long time. I often hear officers say to people in this position something like, well, yeah, I understand that some bad things happened, but that was years ago. The bad guys have probably moved on. They probably don't care about you and might not even remember you. And it's tough to counter this because in many cases, there's not really anything the applicant can point to that indicates a more recent interest in harming them. There might not be any recent threats or anything else that show that the persecutors are still inclined to harm you. So the more time that passes, the harder it is to convince the asylum officer that, yes, in fact, the danger persists. Now, another problem is changing conditions in your country. If things change in a way that suggests that you're less likely to be harmed than perhaps was previously the case, then you might not win asylum. For example, if the political regime that you've long feared is swept out of power, the officer may say, well, those guys are no longer in control, so you'll probably be fine. This may happen even when you're still very much in danger, like where the new government is not really in a position to protect you from the old regime, even though they no longer control the country. I've definitely seen cases denied under circumstances like that, where there's some change that makes the officer think, oh, looks like you'll be fine now. You don't need asylum. A general improvement in conditions in a country can have this effect. If a repressive regime gets a little less repressive, as chronicled in reports like the U.S. Department of State's annual Human Rights Report, well, then an officer may think that you don't need protection here. And that happens even where, in reality, things either haven't really gotten much better in the country of origin, or if they have improved, that improvement is only temporary, with things possibly reverting back to a very bad situation at a moment's notice. And I've got to tell you, some of this, how the U.S. government views conditions in other countries, is sometimes driven not by the facts on the ground, but by politics. And I say this as a former diplomat who has actually worked on the State Department's Human Rights Report. Our relations with the country in question can impact how we report on them and their human rights record. If we want a country to cooperate with us on a given issue, we may be a bit more likely to soften our assessment of the human rights situation in their country. I especially worry about this for my Venezuelan clients, that the United States may strike a softer tone one day in its reporting on Venezuela, not because conditions are really improving, but for political reasons, like to try to gain Caracas's cooperation in opposing Russia or for some other reason related to geopolitics. And then, the next year's assessments of Venezuela by U.S. government institutions, they could paint a rosier picture than reality would dictate, and that could lead to more asylum denials. By the way, if you want to maximize your chances for asylum success, then be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell notification so that you don't miss the insights that I share on this channel. Alright, so we've discussed how the passage of time can hurt your asylum case, framing things in sort of a negative terms. I also like to mention a positive reason to seek to move your case forward. It gets you on the path to greater stability and more rights in the United States. Let me be clear. As an asylum seeker, you do not have legal immigration status. Okay, you may have legal status if you're a student, have long-term business status, or your tourist status is still valid, for example. What I mean is that having an asylum application pending does not, by itself, give you any immigration status. You do have permission to remain in the United States while your case is pending, but you don't have legal status. But winning asylum gives you status, and more importantly, it sets you on the path to permanent residence and ultimately, U.S. citizenship. And that's what you should be aiming for, citizenship. Citizenship gives you the most stability. It's nearly impossible to deport someone who has naturalized as a U.S. citizen. And you have more rights. You can vote in federal elections, get certain jobs that require citizenship, travel abroad freely with a U.S. passport, and bring family members to the United States, just to name a few privileges. You want to start down that path as soon as possible, okay? Now that you're no doubt convinced that you should try to advance your case, try to get your asylum interview scheduled, you may be asking, how do I do that? How can I get the government to give me my asylum interview? Well, you do it by suing the government in federal court in what is known as a mandamus lawsuit. You're asking a federal judge to tell the asylum office that it needs to do its job, that the delay in your case is not reasonable, and USCIS must schedule your asylum interview right away. This is a very effective tool for people who have been waiting several years for their asylum interview. It can work in the post-interview context as well for people who've had their interview but have been waiting a long time to get a decision. We love suing the government to get our clients that to which they're entitled under the law, to have their case adjudicated in a timely manner. I'll put a link in the description to a video addressing the question we always get when we raise the prospect of suing the government. Will that hurt my underlying asylum case? Will it make the government mad at me that I dared to sue them, causing them to take revenge by denying my asylum claim? Check out the video linked to in the description for a definitive answer on that issue. If you're ready to take the next step and get individualized help with your asylum case, then please call my office today. That number is 713-352-1593. And remember, we help people all over the country, so it doesn't matter where you are. Call us now to schedule an asylum strategy session so that we can help you secure your future in America through asylum. Again, I'm Brian Manning, and it's an honor to serve you in your asylum journey.